Hi, my name's Dan, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some more complex data types in Unreal. This is part of a series on blueprint scripting. So the setup I've got here is I've got a third-person template map, as I usually do, and I've got a little blueprint that I've created, and I've got two instances of that blueprint. And in that blueprint, we've got a little plate that you can stand on, which is acting a bit like a pressure plate. It doesn't actually detect movement downwards, but it does have a collision box on it, which is how it detects when the player stands on it. Okay, so if you've been following on with this series of videos, last time we started talking about variables. If not, I assume you know something about variables, and maybe you know about more complex data types in other languages. Or maybe you don't, but that's fine. So when we created a variable last time, you can tell it what type it is, and there are some primitive types, which are the most used ones are Boolean and integer and floating point number. We also looked at string, which is used to hold text. There is another couple of text-related ones, which is the name and the text there. The string is the most basic of those, and so is useful for debug textual output. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of these down here and get into some of these that are further down here, so the more complex stuff. So there are these three here. There's the vector, rotator, and the transform. And these are actually what's called structs, or structure. There's more of them down here under this drop-down box. But these have been given their own colors by Epic for the Unreal Engine because they're very commonly used. And we're going to dig into the transform. So what a struct is a way of binding together several values. And in fact, as we'll see in the transform, there are different types. So an instance of the struct will have an instance of each of those different values. I hope you'll see what I mean as we go along. So I'm going to create a function. Actually, I've already got a function there. Let's delete that function. I did pre-create a function called move, and I'm going to use this to do a small move of the blueprint. All the information about the location, rotation, and scale of the blueprint is held in a thing called its transform, which is of this data type transform. And you can set that for an object, and the node that you want to set transform. So they're going to set actor transform. So we're going to apply this to ourselves as the target, that means this particular object. And we want to transform in here. But we haven't got that data yet. I'm going to slide sideways here. Actually, what I want to do is to start by getting the transform for this object. So get actor transform. Here we have it, and it's this orange wire. What do we want to do with it? Well, we want to actually dig into it and find the actual values that are inside. And one thing you can do with structs and with classes, we'll come to classes in a couple of minutes, is that you can break it down into its constituent parts by using break. So this is break transform. And this has broken this down into location, rotation, and scale. Location and scale are vectors, and when we saw these data types before, for this up here, the vector is this yellow one. The rotator is slightly different. It's similar in some ways, so it's this kind of powder blue color. If you don't know what vectors are, don't worry about it at the moment. There are a whole series of these videos about vectors, so go and look at those if you need to. The one that we want to deal with, though, is the location. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to remake the transform, and we're going to drag back from here and type make, and that'll give us the opportunity to make a transform. So that will allow us to put together a location, a rotation, and a scale. And we're going to use the rotation as it was, so we're not going to change it. We're going to use the scale as it was and not change it. And we're just going to mess about with the location. The location is a vector, but it's also a struct, and we can break that. So we're going to break that vector, and it breaks it down into 3 components, which is x, y, and z. And just move that slightly back. And we want to similarly make a vector. And I'm going to plug in the y and the z, but we're going to change the x. And all we're going to do is we're going to add 10 units to the x. So I'm going to take x, go add, so float, 10, and add that in there. Right, let's see if that works. So, again, we've got 2 instances here, and as I try and step on it, nothing happens. That's because I've written the function, but I haven't actually made it happen. So we need to go into the event graph, and I'm going to do it on the event actor begin overlap, and I'm going to call the move function. Right. Let's try that again. And it moves. So when I try and step on the plate, it moves away from me. That's because I'm walking in the positive x direction towards it. Now this other one, if I come from a different angle, it did move, but did you notice? If I come from the side, you can see that it's moving. If I come from the x side. So if I approach it from this side, it's actually running away from me because every time I try and step on it, it moves out of the way in that same direction. And in fact, I can push it all the way under that wall if I want to. So that's the transform data type. Let's have a look at a couple of others. So we'll go back into the blueprint. I happen to have a variable here that I was using previously with this blueprint. It's a Boolean, and that allowed us to look at the variable types. I'm going to change the type of this to another struct that I happen to know is in here, which is a hit result. I can type it right. I'm just changing the name of it. Sorry. Skip. Hit result. Most structs, apart from those specific ones, the transform and the vector, etc., are blue for wires. So that's turned that into a blue thing. And we're not actually going to do anything in particular with this, but I'm just going to show you that this struct has different data in it. So I can break the hit result. And there's a couple of things here. There's a blocking initial overlap. This is all information to do with when 2 objects collide using the collision system in Unreal. And I'm really not going to go into these data, but you can see there's some vectors here. There's some, these are materials. There's components, which are objects. There's a whole lot of information in there. Let's change it to a class type, which is, so classes are like structs, but they also have behavior as well. And if you've been following through this series of videos, you'll have heard me refer to blueprints as blueprint classes. And in fact, that's exactly what they are. They have objects in them, they have variables in them, but they have behavior as well. So classes have behavior as well. And one of the classes that's part of this third-person template is the third-person character. When you start using class variables, when you type it in, you'll see that it brings up this choice box. Almost always you want the object reference, which is the top one. Sometimes you want the ones further down, but that's more advanced stuff. So I'm just going to change that to third-person character. It's given me a warning message because it knows it's in use. It doesn't know that I'm actually not using it for anything specific. And that's changed. And that's gone to a light blue now as a class type. And once again, I can pulled this out and I typed in break, and I was assuming I could break it. You can access individual variables, but you can't break it. The same as a struct, you would say. So I'm going to put in get actor transform, because that is possible. Something weird is going on here with that. I'm just going to delete that reference there. So that's allowing me to get hold of the actor transform. There probably is other data in there that I can get, and there's a whole lot of functions. So once we've got a reference to an object that's a member of a class, you have access to all the functions that are inside that object. There we go. And so that was a built-in one. And having told you that a blueprint is a class, let's prove that by actually changing the type of this to a my blueprint, which is the class that I've got. My blueprint. There we go. Now, this is a little crazy, maybe you might think, because I've got a reference to a blueprint inside a variable, inside the class itself. And yes, you can do this. You can refer to objects of the same class. Now, what I've just done is I've made that a visible variable. I'm going to compile that and go back out here to have a look at these two blueprints. So that variable has been made public, and it's called isOn, which is not a great name for it. But I have one instance there, which is my blueprint, and one instance there, which is my blueprint too. And I'm going to make it so that they refer to each other. So this one was my blueprint, so I'm going to pick my blueprint too. So it gives you the option of all the ones that exist in the world. This one's my blueprint too, so I'm going to give it reference to my blueprint. Okay? Go back into the script and show you why I've done that. And we're going to open up the function move, because at the moment what it does is it gets the actor transform for itself, and we're going to make it so that it gets the actor transform from the one that it's referring to. So that's actually going to be the other one, the opposite one. And so we can pull that in there and plug it in. So if I compile and then run, the theory is that when I walk on one of these, it makes the other one move. And actually, something happened to that other one. It disappeared. So I'm wondering why that happens. Let's get back into here. We'll change that so it's back to self, and we're going to go into the event graph and tell it that it's going to use this one as the target. But I need to check that I've got them set to each other here. So that's set to, that is my blueprint, and it's set to my blueprint 2. And that's my blueprint 2, and it should be set to my blueprint. And if I walk into that, the other one should be moving. Yes, it is moving slightly. As I walk onto this one, that one should start catching it. You can see it's getting level. It's quite subtle, that movement. So that's how to actually do some script communication as well, but I'll deal with that in a different video. So we've had a quick look through some different variable types. There's the built-in, specifically colored data types that are further down this list, which are the vector and the rotator and the transform. We saw those. We've seen structs, and we use the hit result struct, and we've seen a use of a couple of classes there as well. So that's it from me for now.